I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review a new artist, brand new artist out named Daughter. And the album is called If You Leave. Now, debut albums always make me a little bit nervous. I don't know about you, Tom, but debut albums, there's so much going into an album that, you know, you think of these artists that have all these songs, they write all this music, they finally get into a recording studio and make a professional cut of their music and then release it to the world, yet they really have no idea, first of all, as to really, how do you know what the quality is before you go into it, unless they've done work in the past. I mean, so I always get excited when I listen to a debut album because they're usually pretty hit or miss, right? Yeah. So it's really cool when we get to review a hit, because I'm just going to come right out and say it. I thought this album was impressive from the get-go. First of all, Elena Tonra, this is a British artist. She has a very lovely voice that I would consider kind of like Wyoke at times. And I feel
the
like
whole sound, I think,
the whole sound
that.
really does. Without the kind of noisy distortion that Wyoke really kind of embodies.
Yeah, the highs never get as heavy. They still get just about as intense, though. But also, I would compare this in sound and mood to maybe like the XX.
Absolutely.
I think the vocals, they remind me a little bit of like Feist, only the background, instead of being that kind of folksy sound, it's almost more of a post-rock sound.
Yeah, absolutely. This has a very big post-rock
definitely. If you took away the vocals and played me any track on here and told me that this is a cut from the new Explosions in the Sky or Caspian record, I'd believe you.
Right. Absolutely.
Because that's just where the guitars and the percussion are at. But also what I think is cool about the way they produce this, not to just dive right into production technique here, but one thing you'll notice is when you listen to this, if you focus on the instrumentals, the guitar, bass, drums, whatever other kind of soundscapes are happening, they tend to be very low to mid-range. They're not very bright. And I think that they do that on purpose to leave room for the vocals, because the vocals occupy most of the high end of the EQ spectrum, so they just shine over everything.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes these tracks so emotive. Like, one thing I love about this album is that it is just loaded with guitars. There is just guitar riffs everywhere, and really you have different layers of guitars. You have the bigger like crunchy guitar melodies up front, and then you also have the like austere guitars making up the background. And I really got into the sound and how they presented it. And also you mentioned the XX, and I heard that not only with the vocals but also in the beats too. The occasional electronic beat that they incorporated. It had this album just has kind of just these darker moods to it, but yet it just breathes life when these songs go from nothing to 11. And that's really, really what hits it out of the park for me, is the fact that, you know, especially an artist so you know, early into their career, to see them come and write music that's so soft, and they can just like burst and scream at you by the end of it. I mean, it's moving when you hear dynamic shifts that powerful and hear it so often.
Yeah, and you know, I think even the lyrics work with that, because they're somewhat evocative. They make you think, but they're not too much. You know, they're not too forward. They're not too obvious. There's room for interpretation. There's room to just listen to them and kind of figure out what they mean. But more than anything, I think they match the mood of the music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like all the time. And so I liked the sound of this album right away. As you mentioned from the get-go, it just has this appeal. But what really made me fall in love with it is just as I got to know the songs and realize that they're all good. Now, there are a couple that don't stick out to me quite as much. I saw actually one of your track picks, track 6, Tomorrow, and then track 8, Touch. Those didn't quite jump out at me as much. I found some of my more favorite ones being at the beginning, despite the fact that I did love the closing track and also track 7, Human. But I found that once you really take the time to get to know this album, there's a lot of diversity in the songwriting, but a consistency in the sound that I think just brings it all together and makes a really extremely moving and enjoyable listen.
Great point. And another thing that I love is that it is just, from start to finish, a one fluid album listen. You never feel like, okay, I need to skip this track. I don't want to listen to this track. Well, I agree that there's a couple of tracks on here that maybe aren't quite up to par some of the bigger tracks, which I think was by design, because some of the bigger tracks had to be more impactful.
It can't just be hit after hit. You know, you have to have, and that actually helps with the album flow.
It's not you know, it's not Odelay.
Hit
after hit. But I really felt like this album was strong in the fact that you could put it on from beginning. Every single track you're going to enjoy. You're going to definitely have favorites, but it's one fluid album listen. That's something that always impresses me on a debut album, because it's something that really is rare even for established acts to think about that album listen from that standpoint. So very impressive. I just love this album. The more I listened to it, the more I just kept falling in love with it. Especially when I started picking apart all the guitars, getting into the vocals and things like that. I'm gonna go 85 on this one.
I'm gonna go 83.
So definitely on our love list. We really got into this album. Definitely want to hear what you guys thought. If you haven't heard of Daughter, please go check out If You Leave and leave us a comment telling us what you thought. And if you like post rock, or if you like other acts, like Wye Oak was the first that came to my mind. But if you like stuff like that, this is definitely something that you will want to check out. Leave us a comment at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what albums from 2013 you'd like to see us review. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Movie Music Critique Forward.
Setting fire.